The International Institute of Connecticut, or ICON, is funded by multiple governmental organizations. The Bureau of Populations, Refugees, and Migration, or PRM, funds the Refugee Reception and Placement Program through the U.S. Committee for Refugee and Immigrants, or USCRI. The Office of Refugee Resettlement, or ORR, funds the Survivors of Torture Program and the Refugee Matching Grant Program. ICON is contractually obligated to properly document all services, and documentation should be viewed as importantly as providing services. ICON's funders judge success for all three of these programs by the quality of our documentation. This is why it is crucial that staff, volunteers, and interns are properly documenting the services they provide to the clients of ICON. The following slides will demonstrate ICON's documentation expectations of you as a member of our team. Case notes are created to chart a client's progress, not a caseworker's progress. They should always be written not for the writer's own recollection, but for the uninformed. Each client's case note log should be written so that if a new staff or volunteer opens the file, all the pertinent information about the client's journey with the agency is properly laid out. To do this, the following information should be listed: where the event took place. For instance, met client at his apartment. Was an interpreter present? What tasks were completed? What was the purpose of your activity, and what was accomplished? What important observations the writer makes about the client? What the client learned. Providing a client information is only part of the work we do. Determining what information a client is processing is key and should be documented. Lastly, what are the next steps? Each interaction with the client should lead to the next interaction. I'm not fucking. Case notes are a story and should include detail and should flow. If, in a case note, you reflect that a client has a broken lock in their apartment, a follow-up case note should reflect the efforts you and the client made to rectify this. Too often, case notes are written about the problem, but no follow-up documentation is provided for the solution. When going by case notes alone, it leads the reader to believe you identified a problem but never addressed the client's need. If an action or an event is scheduled for a later date, there must always be a follow-up case note. It is important to also document on conversations. If a client calls you to state they made their own appointment, this should be documented, along with follow-up when the appointment date occurs, even if the client attended the appointment independently. Remember, the case notes are charting the client's progress and not the staff's. Proper case noting may be the only reflection of your work that your coworkers, supervisors, and funders will have at their disposal to determine the quality of services a client receives. Most importantly, when thinking about documentation, remember, if it is not written down, it did not happen. Let's look at the way most case notes will be set up. Case notes will follow the same pattern. First, where is the action taking place, i.e., met client at the office? Second, was an interpreter present, i.e., interpreter translated conversation? Third, possible follow-up from the last meeting, i.e., about the results of the client's DSS application. If the note is not about follow-up, it will be about possible actions for that day, i.e., about client's current DSS application and the steps that still need to be completed. Fourth, observations made by the writer, i.e., client reported not feeling comfortable making necessary phone calls to DSS independently. Fifth, what the client learned, i.e., Client was educated about the importance of completing application as client's rent is due. Client reported understanding importance. Finally, what is the next step? i.e., client reports will make phone calls by the end of the day. We'll meet with client again at a later date to follow up and begin working on a resume. So in total, that case note would read, met client at office, interpreter translated conversation about client's current DSS application and the steps that still need to be completed. Client reported not feeling comfortable making necessary phone calls to DSS independently. Client was educated about the importance of completing application as client's rent is due. Client reported understanding importance, and client reported would make phone calls by the end of the day. We'll meet with client again at a later date to follow up and begin working on a resume. Remember, case notes are not notes you make to yourself. They are professional documents that will be viewed by your coworkers, supervisors, and ICON's funders. Writers should avoid making judgments about a client's feelings or actions. View the first statement. Client not interested in engaging in services. Can you determine why this statement does not reflect proper documentation skills? As a human being, we often interpret actions and assume the cause. As a caseworker, especially one working cross-culturally, it is imperative that we not draw conclusions about a client's behavior. Document the actions as seen in the second statement. Client did not arrive on time for appointment and during meeting did not respond when asked questions. Providing services to clients is time-consuming, and many caseworkers do not take the time to properly document the services they provide. As writers, we often do not give ourselves the credit we deserve or that the client deserves. View the first statement. Wrote a resume for client. This statement implies that we did work for a client and did not assist that client in learning any new skills or education about the importance of creating a resume as a way of gaining employment. The second statement, taught client how to properly set up a resume to increase chances of obtaining employment, better illustrates the skills and education we are contractually obligated to provide by our funders. Consider using the following action words in your case notes. Teaching, taught. Coaching, coached. Assisting, assisted. Prompting, prompted. Gave information, instructed. Demonstrating, demonstrated. Modeled. Can you think of a time when you have done any of these actions with a client? Did you use that term when documenting? It is also important that we are being truthful about where information comes from. Too often, case notes reflect statements such as, client went to the doctor. How do you know the client went to the doctor? If a staff member wasn't present, a better way to phrase this would be, client reported going to the doctor. Remember, once you document an action, it becomes a fact. These action words can also assist you when making statements. For instance, if you documented client self-sufficient 120 days after arrival, you leave too much room for questions. A funder, when reading this note, will always look for follow-up documentation. A better note would be, client self-sufficient 120 days after arrival, evidenced by a monthly take-home salary of $800 from Stop and Shop and monthly rent and utility costs at an expense of $500. Many of the services we provide are contractual obligations with our funders. I strongly recommend you request a copy of the contract to review. Because these services are required, it is crucial that we are documenting them as expected by our funders. In addition to our contractual obligation, you will engage in conversations with clients that cover a variety of topics, such as mental health status and/or treatment, job readiness and/or job retention, ongoing medical treatment, and housing. Documenting these conversations is just as important as documenting services delivered. Each client is unique and comes with their own challenges, hopes, and goals. It is important we reflect through our documentation our interest and engagement with these topics. Properly documenting service delivery is a crucial part of your job here at ICON. Fully detailing the services you provide to clients will ensure that the programs we run here at this agency will be funded, and the agency will continue to assist some of the world's most vulnerable members assimilate into the United States successfully. Please complete the form you were given and submit it to the Manager of Quality Assurance. If you have any questions regarding this PowerPoint or the handout, please do not hesitate to contact me either in the office or by email.